Alright, what's up you guys? This is Devin from CenturyFX Studios and we're back with another video. Today we're going to be talking about the reasons why the kit lens sucks so much. Now here in my hands is the 18 to 55 millimeter 3.5 to 5.6 EFS Canon kit lens. The first one, I believe. It has like this little rubbery grip that's really old with a little silver ring on it to make you think it's with some value, but I'm going to tell you all the reasons why this lens sucks. The main reasons why this lens sucks. Now, it may not be the best lens on the planet, but it does have a good zoom range for your crop frame sensors. As a matter of fact, this lens mount is made for your crop frame sensors like your 80Ds, your 70Ds, your 60Ds, your 50Ds, your 40Ds, your 7Ds, 7D Mark II, so on and so forth. This probably won't fit on the full frame cameras because this is an EFS lens, period. Everyday range, you can do pretty much anything you want to with it in like a room environment or an event type of space. Now it won't zoom in all that far, but it's a decent all-around range. Now this is an autofocus lens, so you have that benefit. You also have some fairly cruddy optics in it, and you don't really have that good of build quality with these things. If you drop it, you're probably gonna break it. Drop it 2 times and you're lucky if you're able to save the glass in them. But yeah, these lenses are not durable. They just give you a decent range and they just are to get you by in a pinch. Unfortunately, the things that I just talked about are not the main reasons why this lens sucks so much. The main reason that will lead you to all the other reasons is the aperture. A lens, one of the main reasons why you get a lens is for the amount of light it lets into the camera. This lens has a variable aperture, which means that this lens doesn't let the same amount of light in it at certain focal distances. So when you zoom in, you don't get as much light coming to this lens. So say for example, I'm going to put up a whole bunch of graphs to show you exactly how much light you'll lose in a certain situation. Now, a lot of people really don't think about it. They just want a camera and a lens. When they first get their first kit lens or kit camera, they'll buy that Amazon kit and they'll be like, oh, it comes with a kit lens, it comes with filters, gels, and all this other stuff, lights. Now, all the other stuff might make a little bit of sense, but for this lens is probably the biggest anchor or probably the biggest hindrance that you'll get for the body that you have. Usually the body is a lot better than the kit lens that it comes with these little Amazon packages. And since it has a variable aperture lens, it's really going to be a hindrance on you because this is what a variable aperture does. Now I'm going to put up this first graph, and I'm starting at 1/60th of a second. You can notice I have my shutter speed up there, my aperture, and my ISO up there. I'm not going to change the ISO to make it simple for you guys. It's always going to stay at 100. This is to get the cleanest image, noise-free image that I can possibly get in this situation. The aperture is going to have to change. When you look down the table, you're going to see the aperture change because there's nothing you can do about this lens's aperture changing, because you're at 3.5 when you first start, but about after 7 to 10 millimeters, it goes to 4.0. Then it goes to 4.5, and then it gets to 5.0, and then 5.6. What does this mean to you as a photographer, though? Well, if you know about stops, when I started to study stops, I really started to understand why the kit lens was a bad lens. And when you start to study the stops and the unit of measurement of light in a camera's exposure, then you'll start to understand exactly how much light you're losing and how detrimental this is to your image quality. Now, if you have a kit lens, you're looking at a 3.5 to 5.6 in most cases. Now, there are some high-end lenses like L lenses that are variable aperture. All right, so when I started to study stops, I noticed that going from 3.5 to 5.6 is 1 1/3 stop of light that you're losing. So when you're at 18 millimeters and you're like, okay, let me set my camera, because usually when you put the lens on, you're zooming all the way out, right? So you're at 18 millimeters and you think at 3.5 you're gonna get a setting of 1/60th of a second at ISO 100. You might be able to have that setting, but once you start zooming in and composing a different shot, which 95% of the time you are when you're doing photography, you're going to zoom in and zoom out if you have a zoom lens. So when you're doing that, you're going to understand that, hey, this aperture is moving a little bit, and your camera might compensate for this and you don't even know it. When you put a kit lens on it that takes away more than half the light when you zoom in, that's more than half the light. 1 1/3 stops is half plus a third stop. That's 4/3 worth of your light gone from your original settings. So if you had 18 millimeters and you were shooting it at what, 1/60th of a second at ISO 100, you're now going down. If you zoom that all the way in to 55 millimeters or any other distance that's past 10 millimeters past what you did, so if you're at like 25 millimeters and you zoom in just a little bit more, you're going to change those settings and you're going to lose a third of a stop, third of a stop, 2/3 of a stop. And sometimes some cameras aren't fast enough to think about all this stuff. Your lens is changing and also your exposure is changing, so your camera's bound to make a mistake on the exposure because all these settings are changing and it doesn't know what you're trying to nail down, especially if you're zooming fast or doing this and that and other. It has to compensate for all the changes. And with the kit lens, not only on the shutter speed side are you losing, but if you set it to another setting, you might be losing on the ISO side. A lot of people like me like to put it on manual and go auto ISO. And what this does is it says, okay, you set your shutter speed, you set your aperture, and I'll do the rest with the ISO. So if I'm zooming in with this lens at 55 millimeters, I'm going to have 1 1/3 stop. That's less than half the light. I said again, that's less than half the light you started with. So when you zoom in and I'm at auto ISO, it's going to ramp that ISO up from what? If I was at an ISO 1000 when I started, it's going to ramp me all the way up to 2500 ISO. And on my 7D, I can't, most of the time I can't afford that because all the noise is coming in. Any crop frame sensors, really, you don't want to be shooting it over 1000 ISO, 2000 ISO. 2500 ISO is not something that you want to do on a crop frame sensor. So depending on what mode you have, it's always going to absorb 1 1/3 stops of light at the max from you. That's less than half the light you started with. Now think about this contextually. What if you had half an arm, half a hand? What if you had half a body? You know, the camera is more of an extension of you. So, you know, it's like a swordsman. He always says that sword is an extension of his arm. But what if you only had half of that? You don't want to go outside with half a tool. So my advice to you, if you have a kit lens, get a 55mm 1.8. Usually it's around the same price, if not a little bit more than a kit lens. It doesn't zoom in or zoom out, so you have a learning curve, but it will give you better compositions. It will retain so much more light, if not double the amount of light that this lens retains, and you'll have 10 times better images because of it. I'm Devin with CenturyFX Studios, guys. Thanks for watching the video. I've been thinking about this a long time, ever since I learned about stops and how much a stop is. A lot of people don't even think about what a stop is or how much you can lose on the exposure triangle because of these kit lenses. So really think about how much light you're losing, and is that really degrading your image quality, or are you in always bright situations where the kit lens doesn't matter? Tell me in the comments below. All right, guys, have a great day.